Forget the rain. Forget the weather map on the evening news. What you are looking at is a monster made of heat, a mountain of warm water sitting in the Pacific Ocean that is roughly 1.5 times the size of the entire United States. You can't see it from a boat. You can't feel it from a beach. But it's there, it's real, and it's heavy enough to nudge the weight of the planet around. This is a Super El Nino, and most people file it under bad weather, a rainy season gone wrong. That's a mistake, and a big one. So how does a pool of warm water end up deciding the fate of nations? Because when it grows strong enough, this thing doesn't just change the forecast. It decides which farms turn to dust, which rivers run dry, and which of the world's great trade routes simply stop working. It quietly redraws the borders of who has power and who does not. To understand how a pool of warm water becomes one of the most powerful forces on Earth, you have to stop thinking of the ocean as flat and calm. You have to see it in the way the planet does, as a living, shifting mass of energy that can throttle a continent. Here's how the monster is born. Normally, steady winds called the trade winds blow across the tropical Pacific from east to west, like a hand constantly pushing warm surface water over toward Asia and Australia, piling it up on the far side of the ocean. That warm pile is the warm pool, and in normal times it stays put in the west. In an El Nino, those trade winds weaken and sometimes give out entirely. With nothing holding it back, that enormous mass of warm water comes sliding back east across the Pacific toward the Americas, like a tilted bathtub sloshing its water to the other end. A layer of warm water reaching down some 650 feet spread across thousands of miles of ocean simply relocates. And because warm water is the fuel for storms and the thief of rain, moving it is like dragging the planet's weather engine to a new spot and bolting it down. That's why this matters far beyond a wet winter. Think of El Nino as a kind of dictator of the global climate. It does not negotiate. When it sits down over the Pacific, it issues orders that entire continents are forced to obey. One of its favorite victims is a thin strip of water that the entire world economy leans on, the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal does not run on seawater. It runs on rain, on fresh water held in a lake that lifts ships up and over the land between two oceans. El Nino chokes off that rain. During the most powerful El Nino of the last decade, the lake feeding the canal dropped so low that authorities were forced to cut the number of ships allowed through, slashing daily crossings from around 36 down to as few as 24. Vessels stacked up by the hundreds, waiting weeks to pass. Some captains paid enormous sums just to jump the line. A drought 1,000 miles away had reached out and squeezed a choke point that a huge share of global trade depends on. And the canal is just one target. Once that warm pool is in the wrong place, its reach is almost hard to believe. The same single event can light opposite corners of the planet on fire and drown the others. In a strong El Nino, Australia and Indonesia dry out and turn to tinder, primed for catastrophic wildfire, while at the very same time the deserts of coastal Peru get slammed with flooding rains. East Africa floods. Parts of Southern Africa and India bake under drought that threatens the harvests, feeding billions. One warm mass in one ocean, pulling the strings of weather on nearly every continent at once. So forget what El Nino does to a single canal. How does one shift in one ocean grab the entire planet by the throat at the same time? The answer goes deeper than weather. It reaches all the way down to the spin of the Earth itself. This is the part that sounds impossible, and it's true. A strong El Nino can change how fast the Earth spins. It works through something called angular momentum, but you already understand it from a spinning figure skater. When a skater pulls their arms in tight, they spin faster. When they fling their arms out, they slow down, because the same spinning energy is now spread over a wider shape. The Earth, its oceans, and its atmosphere are one connected spinning system. And during a strong El Nino, that giant slosh of warm water across the Pacific drives huge changes in the winds above it, speeding the atmosphere up. To keep the whole system balanced, the solid Earth underneath has to give a little spin back, so the planet itself turns a hair slower. Now, how big is this effect? During the monster El Nino events on record, the length of a single day grew by a little under 1 millisecond, around 0.6 to 0.9 milliseconds at the peak. It's real. It has been measured by networks of radio telescopes precise enough to catch it, and it follows El Nino like a shadow. Your days genuinely get longer. You're simply far too small and slow to feel a planet stretching its clock by a fraction of a heartbeat. Now let me be straight with you, because this is where bad science videos lie. This wobble is tiny and it is completely natural. The Earth is always sped up and slowed down by these fractions as its air and water shift around. It's not a sign the planet is breaking, but that is exactly what makes it so unsettling. This is not some fragile little ripple. It takes an absolutely staggering amount of energy to change the rotation of an entire planet, even by a fraction of a millisecond. And El Nino does it casually, as a side effect, just by moving its water around. That is the real measure of the beast you're dealing with. So step back and look at what this single mass of water really does. We're not watching a storm. We're watching the face of human geography get redrawn in slow motion. Think about what actually moves a civilization. Where the rain falls decides where food grows. Where food grows decides where people can live, where cities thrive, and which nations stay rich and stable. So what happens when something can move the rain itself? A strong El Nino reaches in and rewrites those rules across half the planet in a single season. Farmland that fed a region for generations cracks into dust. A reliable rainy season vanishes, and with it, the harvest. Somewhere else, land that was dependably dry drowns under water it was never built to handle. These are the slow, quiet forces that have toppled governments and emptied whole regions throughout history, now triggered by one warm pool in the ocean. And here's the part that should stay with you. Ocean heat like this is not staying still or fading away. Across recent decades, our oceans have been soaking up extra heat at a rate scientists compare to several atomic bombs worth of energy. Every single second, around the clock, year after year. That stored heat is the raw fuel that makes each big El Nino more violent than it would otherwise be. We're not just watching the monster, we're feeding it. So a Super El Nino is not really a weather event at all. It's a preview, a demonstration of how little it takes, just a shift of warm water in one ocean, to decide which parts of the world flood, which burn, which eat, and which go hungry. The map you grew up with, where the green places stay green and the dry places stay dry, was never a permanent fixture. It is a temporary arrangement, and the ocean has just shown us how easily it can be redrawn. The ocean changed shape, and the map of human power shifted with it. A mountain of invisible warm water turned out to be one of the most powerful forces on the planet, and we are the ones quietly making it stronger. It's humbling to realize how much of our fate is steered by forces this far beyond our control. And if a single warm pool can redraw the map in one season, think about what happens when the climate tips the other way and locks whole continents under ice. What actually triggers an ice age, and could it happen again? That story is on your screen right now. Go watch it.